Ruth Hummel. I'm the president of the Plainville Historical Society, and we're working on a major project taping the memories of World War II veterans. This is tape 3. We're also collecting all sorts of memorabilia for a large display this summertime, which will be called Plainville Remembers World War II. And this is one of the little items that's shown up, and we really don't know what it was used for, except possibly hung on the wall when someone had a serviceman in the military. Our first guest on this new tape is Joe Sastre, known as the Whistling Mailman in Plainville. And how many years were you a mailman, Joe?
About 39.
39 is a long walking career. And Joe has had some very interesting experiences in his military career, and he's going to talk to us about it.
Well, to begin with, I'd like to say I wasn't in the real action of the war, but I was close enough. As I speak, I don't like the boys that really did the job think I'm making fun of them, but this is what happened to some of us on the drop of the dice. So I started off in Newport boot camp, which was very cold, by the way, and we took tests and we got our haircuts and we got our teeth checked and we went through all of the physical things, and out of the whole company, 2 of us were sent to aviation metalsmith school.
Now, what year was that, Joe?
That was 1942.
And this was the Navy.
And this was the Navy. And in November, I had turned 19 at Newport, and that happened to be the coldest day of the year up there. And it was quite interesting for a young kid. Didn't even realize there was a war going on. But as we progressed, as I say, I went to aviation metalsmith school in Norman, Oklahoma, and before I went there, I got 5 days leave, which I spent at home. It was very good to get some of that home cooking. And when I left, I had to catch a train at Hartford, and this was interesting. Of course, it wasn't winning the war, but when I got on the train, it was full, and then there was an empty train, and they wouldn't let me in. And finally, all these women came. They says, "Let him in, let him in." It happened to be the Rockettes that were at the, I think it was the State Theater.
Yeah.
At the time they got through with the show there. And I'll tell you, I thought I was in heaven. I was the only guy there with all these Rockettes. And I'll tell you, they're really smart women, and they were very nice, and it was a good trip. I had to leave them at Chicago, and I changed trains to Norman, Oklahoma. Our base, our school was in back of the Oklahoma University, and I spent about 2 or 3 months there learning the business, and we'd go to Oklahoma City, and I guess that's where I did most of my action during the war. There was a bar there called either Little Abner's or Daisy May's, but anyhow, all the waitresses were dressed like Daisy May's, and you couldn't get out of there without having a battle of some sort. And so from there, I was sent to, I got my metalsmith's stripe, and we had gone to, we were sent to Norfolk. Now there, it was a aircraft repair shop where we were sent to, and I was there for about 3 months, and there was nothing to do. It was like regular 8 to 5 working day, and we had the rest of the time off. And so we'd go on the weekend to Norfolk. And one thing that stands in my mind there, we hooked up with these British sailors. And one sailor in particular, he didn't like FDR. He didn't like the United States Navy. Anyhow, as we drank and we had fun with them, they were going to leave the next day, we managed to get the guy that was most outspoken of FDR. And we managed to get his chest tattooed with the American flag on it. And so we felt pretty good about that. we took them all to the docks and dumped them off.
This was a permanent tattoo job?
Yes, it was.
Oh,
it was a
bless
permanent.
you.
I forgot how much. We just about had enough money to pay for it. But we felt better. And
so did FDR.
Right. And so that was outstanding. There's other things that happened, but I could go on all afternoon. But from Norfolk, they sent us out to the West Coast. Now here we are going back and forth. I've never done so much traveling in my young life at that point. And we got to San Francisco, and they put us in the Shore Patrol. Now, we were there for 3 weeks, and of course I was always a little outspoken and joking around. Our first job, they were taking us out, and the chief says, we got a new beat to patrol. So I says, now that'd be pretty good. So they named off the pairs, and I was left alone. I says, well, who am I going with? He says, you got the new beat. He says, you only need one guy. So they put us on a big carrier. It was the carrier Essex. They were using it as a troop ship. So we didn't know still if we were going to be on an aircraft carrier or what our job was going to be. And here I haven't worked on a plane yet. So as we went by and we went under the Golden Gate, I think the sight of us leaving it just, he says, well, this is it. The fun is over. And it was a sad thing for me. And we finally ended up in Hawaii, which was very beautiful, despite the attack they went through. But as we went into the harbor and we saw our Navy sunk, I don't think there was a dry eye in the place. And everybody was quiet. We got off the boat quiet. It seemed like everybody had some determination of some sort. So they put us in a unit where we had to wait to be reassigned. And I never had so much pineapple in my life. I think I had pineapple pancakes in the morning with pineapple sausage, pineapple soup, pineapple this, pineapple. So then I was sent to, in Hawaii, Kaneohe Bay, which is over Mount, was it Pali? I forget the mountain. But it's a nice little bay, seaplanes, where the Navy had a air facility there. And they put us in the Seaman Guard, which we guarded the base. And I never seemed to get mess duty. I guess my reputation as a cook preceded me, and it still follows me to this day. And but it was nice. It was beautiful country, and it was the same. You could see the scars of the attack, and so I spent maybe 2 months there. Then they put us on a troop ship, and I says, "Boy, we're finally going to do something." So we were assigned to a CASU outfit, which was Carrier Aircraft Service Unit. So I thought, oh boy, I'll be put on a aircraft carrier. So we continued on and on and on. We stopped at I can't remember the island, but we had to stop and wait for the rest of the convoy. Then they issued us guns and the pack and the gas mask. I says, uh-oh, now this war is going to get serious. So we steamed out of that harbor again, and we continued on. It was a waiting game, and all kinds of rumors where we're going. We're going to attack Japan. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. So it ended up the Battle of Saipan and Tinian. And what we did was we docked outside the islands, and when the Marines secured the islands, we went in. And here again, my hats are off to the Marines, because we saw them coming off right after their battles and everything, and the looks in some of their eyes, and it was a sad thing. And somebody hollered out, hey, did you save any Japs for us? He says, don't worry, you'll see plenty. They're in the caves up there. So anyhow, we settled in, we had our airstrip. We had to live in pup tents. And as we're setting up the pup tents, he says, there are a lot of Japs in the island, and they're starving. The only place they can get anything to eat is this field. It's a sweet potato or a yam garden or field. And I says, geez, I hate sweet potatoes and I hate yams. But anyhow, we slept in pup tents for a while. And we built up our base. We got our supplies, and we worked on the planes as they came in. So finally we got the CBs built up so that we would have 6 men tents. And we each had to dig a foxhole. And I made mine nice and deep. And so one night we got the air raid signal, and the Japs came over and bombed and strafed. So this guy, he took my foxhole because it was nice and deep, and his was only about that thing, about 4 inches deep. I just cuddled in his, and here you can see the machine gun coming down, and here again, the good Lord either watched me or the roll of the dice, because he had taken my foxhole, and he got shot through both legs. So I didn't know whether to feel guilty or not, but at least he went home. So that was an outstanding thing.
Now, Joe, at that location, you had planes coming in. Did you have a good airstrip there, or was it something that they had just built quickly?
No, the airstrip was there. There was 2 of them, in fact.
It was an existing.
Yes, and but the Japs were taking one last fling. They tried to bomb the strip. See, I think there was a west field and there was a north. Well, this was the bigger one. So, as I said before, I said somebody's looking out for me. And but no matter where you go, you'll always meet somebody from home. One day I was walking down the street, and here's this Marine. I says, geez, that guy looks familiar. And it was Tony Lepore.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
And, geez, we got together. I'll tell you, it was almost like seeing a girlfriend. But we got together, and we had a softball game between his unit and my unit, and we had a heck of a good time. And I just thought, out of all these places we are, you still meet somebody from home. And I don't know if I was going to be getting home before him or not. I says, well, if I get home, I'll see your folks, and vice versa. So here again, there's another time I was lucky. As an aviation ground crew, if we got 4 hours flight time during the month, I don't know whether we got 10% or 50% of our base pay. You had to get 4 hours. And that was like pulling teeth. So I only needed about 10 minutes, and this friend of mine, he needed an hour or so. And they always sent these PV Venturas for practice strafing and bombing on an island that they had bypassed.
Now that's a kind of an airplane.
Yes,
PV
yes.
Ventura.
And they went by it for practice runs for the pilots and the new gunners. And they'd always take 1 or 2 of the ground crew. So I was scheduled to go on, so my friend said, geez, let me take it. That's about a 45-minute thing. I says, oh, all right, I don't need that much time. They flew off and never came back.
Oh, my.
And rumor had it, said that island had 1 gun on it, and that was the day they used it. So I said, somebody's taking care of me. So we had stayed there. Finally, I had my time accumulated to come back to the States. And, one other thing. A lot of the people that watch this won't remember Betty Hutton, the comedian. She had bought a group over there. And I was walking down to the airport, saw this Jeep stuck, and they were trying to push it out. So I go over there, and I said, gee, there's 4 girls in there and a driver. And they were trying to get out. So I said, oh, I'll help you. So Betty Hutton had her back to me, and I was pushing it. She says, "You better get this out of here, because the way this guy's breathing down my neck, we'll never make it." So we shook hands, and that was, for me, that was something. So it was time to go back, so we flew back, and they dumped us right. My friend Rogers, who I still contact, we write to each other, and they dumped us right in the middle of San Francisco, in the city. And here we're standing with our greens on, and it was cool compared to being out in the Pacific, where it was hot all the time.
Now, what year is this that you go back?
This is, 42, must have been 44.
So you're right up at the end of the war.
43, right. And it was close time. So they sent us what they call Splinterville, where everybody was reassigned, and you sign up where you'd like to stay. So I told everybody that was from the East Coast signed up for the East Coast. And I said to him, I said, "Buck, let's say we want to stay here." And we were only two that went to the East Coast. We went to Patuxent River in Maryland, and which is about maybe 55 miles outside Washington, D.C. And we were sent there, and we worked repairing planes. And finally, as the war was starting to dwindle down, I would take weekends into Washington, which was a beautiful city. And from there, I was sent to Lido Beach, and then it was home.
Then it was home. And we have a very nice picture of you in your uniform right next to your elbow there. And your jumper, is that called a jumper, the top of your uniform?
Yeah.
And what is the insignia now? You've got one.
Aviation metalsmith,
Okay,
third class.
That's what that means. And there's hammers with the wings, and that's indicative of that. You're one of the few people that have had any uniform material to bring in.
Well, I tried to get into it today, but
Didn't work, huh?
it'll never work. I wish I could get back. One thing, I was a skinny. I wasn't like I am now. And I remember one time when we were still on Tinian, they needed a skeleton crew to go to Peleliu. And they says, as soon as the Marines capture the island, we're going to fly in. So the chief says, "Well, I want you," and he named the three other guys, to go. And I says, now I know what a skeleton crew is. You pick the three skinniest guys. So, but as we got halfway there, they turned us back because the Japanese had recaptured the airfield, and they just had different plans later.
Joe, looking back over 50 years, a long 50 years since the war, what would stay in your mind the most of your wartime memories?
Well, like I had said, that fella that had taken my place on the plane, he had a wife and two beautiful children, and I think of it at times. And it's just...
as you say, somebody was looking out,
it's so unfair. It's just the way the things happen.
You were lucky several times, from what you're saying.
Yeah, I was.
And you came through with no wounds at all.
No.
So you would say you're probably your friendships and your memories of people who weren't so lucky would be what stays with you.
Yes. I at least I don't feel like, well, I contributed something. I was close by anyway, and I think we learned a lot before our time, that war. But now you think, did it really do the job it was supposed to? As time has dragged on, as we can see what happened, you say...
The question remains.
Right. There we had to fight to protect ourselves. It wouldn't have... A couple of moves by the Japs, they could have captured Hawaii, and it would have been a tough thing. So the people, even the prisoners that we saw, I'd have a working party unloading the truck or something, and you say, geez, now, these guys got wives at home or girlfriends, and but it was a different type. you'd say to one, he'd carry 2 bundles. Hey, nice going. So another guy would try to carry 3. You know, they were trying to please. And,
Sure.
but I think for a lot of us young guys at that time, it made us more, well, what's the word? Not educated. A little, well, we got knowledge before our time.
Maybe a broader viewpoint.
Through these experiences, because you see death, you see wounded, and guys get letters from home, those Dear John letters that people talk about, and they were real.
And they
It wasn't.
Yeah.
I've seen guys fall apart completely, and it's a tough thing. But these are things we'd never gone through hadn't we gone into service.
Well, thank you very much, Joe, for being with us
Okay.
today. Thank you very much. Lifelong resident of Plainville and the area, Harry was an eyewitness to the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And Harry, please let us in on all your memories.
It was I had been up all night on Sergeant of the Guard on the command post where all of the anti-aircraft observation posts come into. And at that particular time that I was going off, all of a sudden there was an awful racket over and around Pearl Harbor. And sometimes they had this practice shooting over there at dummy aircraft. That was what I call it a dummy because it was pulled by an aircraft, and they shot at the balloons. It looked like a balloon, and they used to shoot at them on a Sunday morning sometimes or any old time. And at first I thought it was that, and I looked over and it was smoke beginning to fill up the whole area there. And then one of the B-24, that's one of those, it was one of those big bombers. And all of a sudden it come over so low, it almost, I could almost touch it.
Now, this was one of our bombers?
One of our bombers. And it so happened at the same time that they were started bombing, these B-24s come over from the mainland. And they were bombing, and there was no place for them to land. And they were circling, and they circled so low, and I just couldn't believe it.
In other words, these poor guys were coming back from a bombing run.
No, they were coming in. They were just coming from the mainland. They were coming over to. They were going to be part of the.
They were going to be stationed there.
Stationed there.
Oh, okay.
Part of the
And they couldn't get in, obviously.
Well, that was the trouble. They were bombing, and they started shooting them down. I don't know how many there were, but there was over 10 of them, I think, that was coming in. And they shot some of them down, and there's not too many that got in. And it was a strange sight. And I couldn't believe these bombers would be coming in that low. And
now, could you see the Japanese planes from your vantage point?
I saw some of them, but not as well because the smoke was beginning to fill the sky there at that particular time. That was what was outstanding about it from my viewpoint, that all of the smoke coming up out of there, and the B-24s were circling, and the anti-aircraft, what few we did have start to fire, we were right back of them, and we were starting to take the anti-aircraft fire.
Oh.
It started to come down into our area there, and we lost a few men in there from the anti-aircraft. And I had been up all night, Sergeant of the Guard for our command post, and of course right away we found out what it was, that the Japanese had attacked Pearl Harbor.
Now, this message would have come on the radio?
It would come through our post. They started manning the post. It would come through our post. But at first we had no idea, and then it dawned on us that we were under attack. But actually we didn't know it was Japanese, or maybe the Germans were attacking for all we knew.
So there was absolutely no warning ahead. You people had no inclination of it.
We had previously to the attack, we had alerts, what they call full alerts. Now, under a full alert, that would be where you would be called to your post, and where you would, at that particular time, you would be issued rations, and you would be issued live ammunition. And you would be in your trucks, and you would either you would be recalled or you'd go to your outpost. And we had a couple of those, but we never went out to our outpost. It was just that we were recalled before we even took off. But we did get rations, we had everything. And in my mind at that particular time, I and others, they had an idea there was something going to happen. Just had that feel of it, of, something's going to happen here.
Kind of an instinct.
Because we had about 3 of them in a row, at least once a week, 3 weeks before that, prior to that. And when it did arrive, it really, in my mind, it was not a surprise in that sense. But it was on a Sunday morning and everything, and I had just come off I must have been, I think I was on about 8 hours duty that night, sergeant of the guard there. And we were all set. We were in tents and everything, and we had all of the ammunition and everything in the area, and we were all set to go. And so that's one of the things too, because we were so prepared for this. They made such an effort to be prepared, and that's why we had this funny feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately, we were on our trucks, and we had our ammunition intake, long rations and everything, and we were immediately gone to our outpost. I had an outpost, I was in charge of an outpost, I had 4 men with me.
And this is anti-aircraft? Right?
No, I was an observer.
You were an observer.
On an observation
Mm-hmm.
post.
Okay.
And I overlooked Kaneohe Bay, and that's there were the naval base in Kaneohe Bay, and I overlooked that and the surrounding areas there. And we were all set. We had wired and everything. We just had to hook our phones into the wires and all. And we were all ready to go. But we didn't have any foxholes, and so the first thing we did was to start digging a foxhole, getting prepared, and this was a high area, and we were right on the top of it, and we had to dig a foxhole, and that would also serve as our observation post. So now in Hawaii, you don't have sand, you don't have dirt, you have rock. It was kind of rough, in that sense, to dig.
Were you able to get down through it at all?
We got down into it. We had to get down because it was volcano rock, and it was kind of splintered. It splintered off and everything, and we did dig into it.
And I guess if you need a foxhole, you better dig.
We dug, because we had no idea what was going to happen. As far as we knew, there was we were all set to. They were all set to attack us, and we had to hurry to get holes dug and everything.
Now, was there any action in that bay?
No. Well, there was none that we saw, but I guess there was a couple of planes that went in there, but they didn't do any damage or anything. But they had one of those small submarines that come in here, and put in a couple of torpedoes in there. That was one of those one-man affairs.
The Japanese. You're talking about Japanese. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Japanese. And we did see that submarine, and they were hauling it in at that particular time, bringing it into the...
Now, did you get down into the Pearl Harbor area at all to see the devastation there?
No, not at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But we did, after we saw some of it. But I didn't stay there too long afterward. I was there for, I guess, a couple of months, and then after that I was sent back to the States. But the main thing as far as remembering was that smoke. It just filled the whole sky black.
A lot of fuel in that smoke that would make it black.
It didn't. It burned how it burns black when that particular type of oil that they're using in the boats. And
it must have been quite a shock.
it was. But another thing I remember was the fact I had been up all night, and then we started digging, and I don't remember when we stopped digging. It went through the whole day, and we never got anything to eat that day.
But you did have your K rations or whatever those things were.
We had K rations, and that was all. We've never got anything
Anything
water
to really
or anything.
eat, right.
They didn't bring any water, and we didn't have much of that. I mean, and I don't even remember eating because as far as that, we were living on our nerve.
It was the furthest thing from your mind at that
Furthest thing from our mind was eating.
Now, before we talk about your next section of your exciting career, how about holding up that magazine for us and show us some of the scenery that you saw in Hawaii? Just hold it a second so you can bring in the camera. And you said there were ladies dressed like this that entertained you on the beach?
Yes, we had the hula dances there quite often.
Very lovely.
You want the back of it?
That's the map of Hawaii. That's
Map of Hawaii.
Yeah. And now you came back to the States and you were you got some more training here.
Yeah.
And then
In the same, went along with the same line and everything. And I also got infantry training. Of course, I had some. You always get a basic training, but I got a better training. Let's put it that. I had more basic. Then I went to England. At that particular time, and it was just before the invasion, just got over there. We went over in February, and our particular unit guarded depots over there and airfields over there. And then it was about after June 6th, after the invasion, we were sent down into across from France, in England, across from France, and we were down there for about a week before the invasion. So we did. Finally, we were sent over and into after the beachhead was established, and it pretty was cleared by that time when we went in. But one of the outstanding things in my memory was on the boat, we went in on the troop ships at night, and when we were in there, they were bombing the boats.
Oh dear.
That was a little unpleasant.
Now, Harry, when you got onto the beach, what would be your function then? To establish observation posts?
That was my function. And on the beachhead, I had to establish.
And you actually had to create this area that you were going to be carrying this out in.
I was given it would be the site on the map, and I would have to go look at it and see if it was a satisfactory site for an observation post. And one occurrence was when I was on the beach, and I remember going from one end of it to the other, and going down this road in a Jeep. I was assigned a Jeep and a driver. So I remember this particular night, I was going down this road. There was a plane directly overhead, going overhead, and all the aircraft all centered on
all right over you.
Right over
Oh,
it.
Lord.
And all of this shrapnel coming down all around it. It was just like being shot at.
Sure.
But I remember that and all of the lighting up the sky and everything.
Big spotlights and big searchlights they used. Yeah. So you were there in that area for how long?
I went all the way through from the beachhead to Nuremberg, Germany. Ended up in Nuremberg.
And what was your function there?
I sing.
Sing.
Well, that's when the war ended.
Yes.
When I got to Nuremberg, and it ended at that particular time. But all across that, going across France and Germany, my function was to, I was given a coordinate, and I would go to the site and make sure it was good for observation, and I would have an observation point. And I was always out as soon as the infantry, it was just ahead of us, ahead of where I had to go. They were just moving out when I was moving in to get this established.
So they were always just a little ahead of you.
They were just a little ahead of me.
So you were in some pretty hot spots still.
It was a little uncomfortable sometimes.
Especially when the plane was overhead.
Especially I was all more or less by myself at times. And I remember one particular time when the infantry had just moved out of the town, and I went through this little German town, and I could feel eyes on me looking out. It was from both sides of the homes were two-family homes, and apartment houses, what they actually were, on both sides of the street. And I could just feel it, and sitting in the Jeep with the driver, and I started feeling it, these eyes on me. And this is during the, I guess it was about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And so I got out of the Jeep, and I walked along the side to guard the Jeep in case we got shot at. At least the driver could get in back of the Jeep, and I would be on the other side of it. And I would at least be out to cover. And walking down the street, I went through by this hedgerow, and all of a sudden I heard something in the hedgerow, and I whirled, and I had the rifle all ready to bring it up, and in case I needed it, and I heard bang. It was just about an 8-year-old kid there with I don't know if it was a real gun or what, but he had a gun in his hand, and he had it pointed at me, and I was starting to swing, and I almost, ready to go. And I just think now, if I'd ever swung around, I probably would have hit him. And I was so glad I never hit him, but he ran, and...
and you still don't know if it was a real gun?
I don't know if it was a real gun or not, but...
Your heart must have almost stopped.
Well, like I say, it's a little uncomfortable, some circumstances, but to this day I can still think of, gee, if I'd ever hit that kid, and I would have felt so sorry, but war is war, and
well, especially if it was a real gun, you would have had no alternative.
I would have had no alternative, but I don't know, but he ran anyway, so, but I never forget it because of just the circumstances, the whole thing.
So you were in the war right up to the end.
Right up to the end.
How long, what was your total service, Harry?
I had 5 years.
Oh my.
2 months, 1 day.
That's a long time. That's a long
Right.
time. Harry, looking back over 50 years, when you think of your service all that time, what stands out in your mind the most?
Well, like many of the veterans said, the people, they didn't have the food in France yet. They were just beginning to get organized there, and the little children coming up with their they had these pans coming up and taking the leftover food, and particularly coffee. And they would take when we had coffee left over or something, they would take it from our cups even. And they would take our food that was left over.
Well, they were literally starving.
They were hungry anyway. I don't know how bad they were in that sense, but we used to get candy bars and some of the little goodies like that. We used to give them to the kids.
You used to share with them?
Used to share with them.
So you would feel that the civilian suffering was one of the things that stands out in your mind most?
To an extent. I don't think they were like some areas, but they still were, their food was, they were just beginning to get settled.
And get a system set
and
up.
get a system. Well, they were all coming back from the different places in the where the war wasn't. They had gone out of Normandy and gone out of that area.
And they were getting back into their
And they were
homes.
going both ways. They were going into their cities, going back into the cities. Some of them had been out in the country and around in Normandy in that area, and they had moved out of Normandy, but they had moved into another area, and they were just coming out of that area, going back into their other areas.
Do you keep in touch with any of your friends from the service? You showed me an album full of people that you were in the service with.
I'm afraid I've been very negligent in that respect. I didn't. It was a funny feeling when I come back.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to. I was just exhausted. When the war ended, I was. We had, of course, we knew it was coming, and we were just. Most of us were just.
You were just glad it was over.
We didn't care about anything at that particular time, except just the rest.
So,
we were really exhausted.
So you have a piece of paper there on the table that you were awfully glad to see, I'm sure. Would you like to hold that up so we can bring the camera in on that?
I'm very glad to
And
hold
tell us what it is.
my discharge.
In beautiful condition, Harry obviously was very glad to receive this.
I'm very happy to keep it.
And Harry, thank you so much for sharing your memories with us. We really appreciate your time. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Our series of tapes is Arthur Chambers, longtime resident of the town of Plainville, graduate of Plainville High School, and also the old Trumbull Electric Company. And Art's going to tell us about his experiences in the U.S. Navy.
Okay. Well, I entered the Navy in January of '43, and I had my service time training in Newport, Rhode Island. After we had about 10 weeks in Newport, we all were transferred to the Lido Beach Hotel in Long Island for, well, maybe about 3 or 4 weeks until they had a ship that was ready. It was in Brooklyn Navy Yard. We all went down one morning and found our new home. It was a USS Bullard. It was a destroyer, which a destroyer is about 376 feet long, has 5 5-inch guns, and 5 quad 40-millimeter guns, and 1, 2, maybe about 5 or 6 20-millimeter guns, 10 21-inch torpedoes, 5 forward and 5 aft. And the complement it carries roughly between 375 and 400 men.
That was a city.
Yeah.
It wasn't a ship, it was a city.
It seems like it was big compared to when you see the battleships and the cruisers and the aircraft carriers are 45,000 ton. Ours was 2,100 ton. It was quarter-inch thick walls. Plate was quarter-inch thick on the side.
Did you bring a picture of the Bullard with you?
Yes, I did.
Why don't you hold that up for the camera? Now this is a large ship.
It's camouflage.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes we're gray and sometimes we're camouflage. All
Depending
where
on
we
where you
were
were.
at the section the paint had on it. So after April 9th, 1943 was the day it was commissioned. And we left up and down the Atlantic coast to what we call a shakedown cruise to Guantanamo Bay and back to Norfolk. And on the way back from Guantanamo, which the first thing that happened, one night they had intercepted something. We didn't answer to our challenge, and then we shot a couple of rounds into it. And after the captain sent a boarding party, found out it was a Honduras banana boat.
Oh.
There was no real harm done, just that we contributed maybe to the shortage of bananas for a while during the war. But we went back to Cuba for an investigation, and he finally let us go back to the States. We came back to Norfolk, Virginia. Then from there we left Norfolk, and we went through the Panama Canal into Pearl Harbor. And that's basically was home base for quite a while. The first action we didn't just screen some aircraft carriers at Wake Island, which was just a matter of going around while the carriers went in and dropped a few bombs. I think it was practice more or less for all ships that were involved in the action. And back to Pearl Harbor, and then we went down to Espiritu Santos in the New Hebrides Islands. And from there, on November 11th of 1943, we went up past the Solomon Islands. They made an attack on Rabaul, which at that time was a big Japanese stronghold. And I think it was the first attack by a carrier-based group, because in the morning we all sat around, we were at our general quarters, and the airplanes were going into bombing all day long, and everybody was saying, boy, it was pretty nice, wasn't nothing happening. But late that afternoon, they got the bogies, which they call the Japanese planes, coming in on the radar. And there was about 150 torpedo planes and dive bombers from the Japanese that were attacking our group. And I remember looking up, I happened to be a first loader on a 40 millimeter. That time I looked up over Bunker Hill, the aircraft carrier, and I never saw so many planes and coming down in one dive in all my life on this Japanese, on our carrier, our Japanese planes. But fortunately, nobody, no ships were sunk that day. I think one carrier took a torpedo, and we got credit with shooting down, I think it was 2 planes.
Now, those weren't the kamikazes.
No, they were just
regular bombers.
dive bombers and torpedo planes. And actually, they didn't seem to bother our destroyers, more or less. They were flying right by us. They wanted to get to the bigger ships. So after that, we went from there. I think we went up to, back to one of the islands, back to Espiritu Santos. Then we went up to the next one was Gilbert Islands, which was Turara. Everybody know the Gilbert Islands, but they know Turara. You probably heard the Marines all landed on Turara. We were screening carriers for when they were landing on Turara, the troops. And I think we got a couple Bettys, Japanese Betty planes that we shot down that time. And from there we went up to the Marshall Islands, where they had a few more attacks up there. Then we went back, we had anti-submarine duty around Turara for maybe 3 or 4 weeks, just going around the islands to make sure submarines didn't come up and shell the Marines that were stationed on the island. But every night there used to be one lonely plane that used to come down from the Marshalls. I forget the name. Every night about 11 o'clock there'd be one lonely plane. He would come and drop one bomb.
This is a Japanese plane?
Japanese plane. Then he would go home. It was clock. You could set your watch to him almost. But every night he was high. And he just a nuisance, I guess. You know.
All right. How would you detect submarines?
We have sound gear on our ship.
Like a sonar?
Your sonar, they send out a ping until you get a hit and a reflection, you know, it hit.
Now, was that pretty early in the history of sonar?
No, it was
pretty well
good then,
developed.
yeah, because we use it all the time, and you take all your aircraft carriers and battleships, destroyers are always screens. You're always around the outside of the formation, so you're screening all the time. And they don't go anywhere without you during the war, because you're only a small ship, but you have all our depth charges on there. I don't know if I mentioned depth charges before.
No, I don't think
we have on both sides, plus we have big 600-pounders on the back of the ship.
And that's what you drop on the subs.
Drop them, they set them for different depths, whatever they want them. So we're pretty well good for submarine warfare. And after that, I'm trying to think the islands where we went from there. Eniwetok, I think. Admiralty Islands. And we went down to New Guinea. We had the landings down in New Guinea. We bombarded down there and supported the landing troops in New Guinea and a couple other small islands. Then we went up to Saipan and Guam and screened for carriers up there. And we went back to Pearl Harbor. And I remember the day we were the lead ship going into Pearl Harbor, because we had the commander of a squadron on board, and we started in the channel to go in. We got halfway in the channel, and we got a message, negative, lay out, which go out. So I assumed, I'm sure, the captain should have gone to port, but instead he went to starboard, and he went over a coral reef. Now this ship was big, but it still shook so much, you had to hang on to something in order to stand up. So we finally made it over, crunched our way through. We got into dry dock in Pearl Harbor.
Did it put a hole in the ship?
And he had broken the main shaft of the engine room in the propeller, or screw we call it, but the propeller chunks were tore right out of it. So fortunately for us, we were on board that weekend. We got an R&R for a weekend in the Royal Hawaiian Hotel.
Oh, how nice.
And at that time, I was about the only one on a beach over there. Now it's like New York City, but at that time, that was the place, the Royal Hawaiian. So we had a weekend there. And when they determined they couldn't fix it, we had to come back to the United States. So we came back. It was about 16 or 17 months after we had been out there that we came back to.
Now you came back on that ship, or?
On one engine.
Yeah.
From Pearl back to the States on one engine, and we went in dry dock at Hunters Point in San Francisco. Right away, the first one's in 30 days leave. You know, came cross country, 4 days and 5 nights or whatever it took at that time.
By train.
By train, yeah, all the way back and forth. We had 30 days, so we had 2 weeks traveling time and 2 weeks home basically. But we spent then. At that time, I think it was a blessing. I mean, in a way, we ran aground. We came back because the ships that we would have been at Saipan and Guam was the Gambria Bay, the St. Lo, the destroyers, the Johnson, the Hole, and the D.E., the Samuel Roberts. They all went to the Philippines while we were in the States being repaired. That's when they had the invasion of the Philippines. And they were the fleet that was on the bottom of the Philippines when the Japanese fleet came around. They were going to make a run into Leyte. Of course, all these destroyers in the DE, they had made torpedo runs on these Japanese battleships and cruisers. When the Johnson was sunk, the Hull was sunk, the Roberts was sunk. I believe the Gambier Bay and the St. Louis Air CV, they were converted carriers. They were sunk.
And the Bullard would have been right in there.
And we would have been right in the middle of the torpedo runs. We always used to look at these big torpedoes on the ship and say, boy, we hope we never have to use them. But if we had been there, presumably, we would have had to use them. But I say, fortunately for us, that we ran aground, we were in the States. And at that time, after the repairs, our division squadron was ready to come back to the States, so we had to wait for them. So we were taking trainees from San Clemente. We'd leave Monday morning, run from San Francisco down to San Clemente Island, just shooting the guns and breaking in some new destroyer recruits, I guess, more or less, which was real good duty because we came back on Thursday. We had the weekends off all the time. About 4 months, I think around 4 months we had that duty. Finally, the rest of the squadron was in there and everybody was all overhauled, repaired, and we went back out. Back out again the second trip to Pearl Harbor, and from there we steamed out to about 70 days of hell out in Okinawa, which I remember going up there. We come alongside the aircraft carrier Franklin, refueled off of tankers and once in a while off a carrier. And the Franklin had a band on the hangar deck playing, and they asked us if we needed ice cream. That's like a floating hotel inside compared to we didn't have any ice cream makers or nothing.
What kind of a ship was the Franklin?
It was an aircraft carrier.
Aircraft
I think it's 45,000 ton. It was a big carrier. And they had a band playing. They asked us if we wanted ice cream and any movies we wanted to swap. So we did, and we fueled, and it was about 3 weeks later. We got on Okinawa. Every morning we would leave the task group. At first it was just 2 destroyers. Our duty was to get between the main group in Japan. And we had 3 or 4 fighter planes, and we also had a pilot aboard that we could intercept planes coming in, and he would send the planes out to intercept the Japanese planes coming in. So at that time, they turned out to be kamikaze. But the fighter planes would get a few. Some would always get through. Either our job was that they would try to eliminate us rather than get back to the main group. But some always managed to get through. And basically, I don't know whether bombs hit the Franklin that day or kamikazes, because they hit it bad. It was really destroyed. All but abandoned ship. Everybody was off the ship. But that night we came back to the group, and we had to go alongside the Franklin. And for about 4 hours, we were just constantly pouring water onto that ship.
It was still burning.
She was blazing bad. So we finally got the fires under control, and us and I think 2 or 3 other destroyers had to take her out of the area. And I forgot where we did take her. Now it's been so long.
They would tow her?
They would tow her. No, she had her own power. But she was slow. But we took her out of the danger area. And we went back anyways. And every day, I think 34 days, we were out in the picket line. And we had 15 times kamikaze planes come down. There's a difference between somebody dropping a bomb and a torpedo and a plane diving right at you.
And they purposely aimed at you and purposely crashed into you.
There's one instance after I went up on the signal bridge from when I used to be a first loader when I was a seaman on a ship on a 40 millimeter. After I went to be a signal striker, supposedly I was up on a bridge. My duty was a lookout up on the bridge. I just had a helmet and the earphones. It was supposed to be a lookout. And I remember this one plane, we spotted him. He was coming, maybe, 6 feet off top of the water. He was straight. I swear he was going to hit me right between the eyes. And I was standing next to the captain. And I seen him turn around. He went into the chart house or pilot house where the helmsman was. So I figured he was going inside there. I better follow him because he knows more than I do. He's been around longer than I have. So when he ran through, I heard him say, right standard rudder, which he turned the ship to starboard when the plane is coming in, which would turn the rear of the plane ship into the plane, which would be a lower target because we were up on the bridge, was the highest part of the ship. Basically, he was turning the ship, give it a smaller target. So I was inside the tower, so I figured I better hang on because there's going to be an explosion here pretty soon. They weren't shooting him down, they were missing him, and he was getting pretty close. So I was hanging on to a radar scope that we had inside, nothing happened. So finally went outside, and what happened, when our guns are trained on a beam shooting at this plane, there's a 40 millimeter and a 5-inch gun. It leaves a space maybe 3 feet, 4 feet wide. The plane hit, he left 6 feet of his wing on the side of the ship, and he went through the space, he bounced off the 5-inch mount, and he blew up on the other side of the ship. Now, if he had been 6 inches either way, he would have hit the 5-inch mount or the 40 millimeter with all the ammunition, and it would have been a
Just
real
the
mess.
cards
So
were just right for you.
That was unbelievable. It's almost a miracle. And one other instance, I remember another one was coming straight down, and Captain Kim happened to be behind me. He's looking, and I'm looking, and I'm saying, boy, oh boy, and it seems like nobody, he's coming and coming, and nothing's hitting him. And next time he went right over our mast, and he landed about 4 or 5 feet off the starboard side of our ship. He just missed. So.
Now, would you fish him out?
No, that's what I got in my book in here. It says how the captain was picking parts of the pilot's body off the side of the ship after the deck of the ship because he was real close.
Yeah.
But those are the two that was really close. We had a lot of other ones, but they landed safely in front of us. Specifically, another case was when the war ended. We had Admiral Halsey was telling us that the war ended in the morning, and everybody was happy and jovial. And in the afternoon, we got our general quarters sounding again. So everybody run to the battle station. Sure enough, out of the sky come down another kamikaze. He said, the war is over, they're going to hit us now. But luckily, they knocked the tail of this plane off. Maybe he was up.
It was just
pretty
one
high.
plane?
One plane.
Maybe it was the guy that dropped the one bomb.
Maybe. Anyways, he hit him pretty high up. He landed, say, a safe 200 yards astern anyways. But everybody was saying, boy, the war is over. And this guy didn't get the word, right? They always say somebody don't get the word, right? So fortunately, we had several near misses, but we made it through unscathed, and a lot of them didn't. Our sister ship was with us out on the pick of duty one day, and she took a plane in the forward injury room. I think there was 38 killed and 55 injured. And you get a lot of, because when you tie up in port, you tie up with your own ships. Like our squadron, we always tied up. We were 660 and 661. Our sister ship always tied up. Next thing you get to know the fellas on their ship, the signalmen, and they. And I know a couple of the signalmen because they hit in the forward fire room, and a couple of signalmen I know on there very well. They were killed. And you lose camaraderie, but not only your own ship, all the fellas on the other ship.
Yeah. Would you get leave, like the sister ship would get leave at the same time?
Yeah, when you come to port, most of we always travel together, so you're in the same time, or you know. And when the war did end, we all figured we were going to go to Tokyo Bay for the big signing, but didn't work. They sent our squadron over off the coast of China with some aircraft carriers for a show of strength, I guess they called it, and all for about a month. And everybody was getting a little discouraged because they figured a lot of them had points to go home, and we were still off the coast of China. But they finally said one day we could go in, and we had leave over there, and we went into China and got $4,200 for every American dollar, and everybody was lighting cigarettes and cigars with $500 bills. And doctor, remember when we went ashore, the doctor says, don't eat nothing, don't smell the air, don't do this, and don't do that, but have a good time. He says, so there was nothing left to do.
What's the decal that you have
That's
with
the
you?
decal on a ship, and all the ships had their own decal, and we paint them on the stacks. They put them on the stack of the ship.
It's almost like a cartoon.
That's a bull, with the Japanese
bullard.
planes,
Yeah,
he's throwing them around.
And you've kept that all these
All
years?
years, so every year we get it. It's pretty nice. And they have the interesting facts on our ship. You can give the facts on the book here. We had 17 planes that we were credited with, and we had 6 shore bombardments and 24 mines destroyed. While we were in the Yellow Sea after the war, that's mostly where the mines were floating. During the day, that's all you did was blow up these mines. Shoot them with somebody with a rifle, and they blow up. And another incident, one day we were up on the bridge, and I remember somebody yelled, there's a mine under the water. Somebody said, there's another one under the water. We said, we're in a minefield. Everybody couldn't believe it. For a half hour, we couldn't understand how these big, about 6 feet under the water, these big things were floating mines. We were missing them. There's something wrong. And then come to find out they were big jellyfish.
Oh.
It was the first time in the history of the ship in siesta time that everybody was topside. They all had life jackets on and everything. They couldn't figure how we could miss so many of these mines, but they turned out to be big jellyfish. And we traveled 243,000 miles on the ship from the time we commissioned it to the time we decommissioned it. And we also went 38.5 knots. So if you know 38.5 knots for a ship,
it's about a mile and a quarter.
Yeah, a mile and an eighth, I believe. So you're traveling pretty fast for a ship. That's you can't keep that up too long. But at times that's the fastest in the trial run, the fastest we got. We went 5 weeks without mail at one time, and the total of men served aboard our ship was 455 altogether. Because some come, they transfer now and then, and they had. When you're always in a ship, you're always changing the color. You're just scraping, painting. And we have our statistic here. We wore out 480 scrapers.
Oh, I like that.
I think there's a lot of them on the bottom of the Pacific out there, but it says we wore out 480 scrapers. And 2,400 gallons of paint. But there's always, even if it looks good, you're scraping it, you're painting it, you have to go over the
Isn't
side.
that to keep the men busy
just
sometimes?
to keep them busy,
Yeah.
and it looks good too. There's rough spots. If you stay on top of it, I guess it keeps it good. And I was up on the signal bridge. Another one, I think today they would probably have to shoot me if they could. When we come into port, when we were training these trainees off for the Clan St. Clemente, we come under the Golden Gate Bridge. And then way up on the end of our yardarm, they had what they call fighting lights, different colors for identification in case of battle. And our captain, we had to cover him coming into port and uncover him going out. I can show you on the ship. So the two strikers, or there were three of us, we had to take turns. You climb first, you go up, there'd be like a steel ladder up the mast, then you get into a little like a Jacob's ladder, way up to the yardarm. And it was only, it might be about 4 inches wide. Then you have to sit on it, shimmy out of the end of the yardarm. In the ship, you're moving at that time because you're under, you're up on the top, you're getting this. You can look down the number one stack, and the signalman would run the canvas bag up. You would have to tie it on, you shimmy back, swing around the mast, go out to the other yardarm, get the other one and tie it on, and come down.
Oh, and you covered the lights.
You covered
with
the lights
bag.
while
Yeah.
we were in port anchored.
Yeah.
And it'd be the same thing. When you get up to go underway, some you have to climb up there and take them off. So we had to do, you had to do that or go, they had aft steering, they used to call it. Way down below the ship in the rear and the bottom of the ship, they had another steering. In case they run into a problem upstairs, they could steer it from down there. So I would rather go down in the steering, but I went up there a few times. But I think that today they would probably have to shoot me because I don't think I could go up there today.
That's like
It's
something
pretty
you
high.
see out of the old
pretty high.
whaling ships.
Yeah.
Art, whatever became of the Bullard, do you know?
I stayed on it till end of April '46, and she was in San Pedro on the dock, and they were decommissioning her. I don't know. She went into mothballs, but I don't know to this date if she was ever sold. So they sold a lot of them to different
For scrap,
countries.
too.
Scrap.
Yeah.
And she's either mothballs or she's out there decommissioned. But somebody told me one time she was sold for scrap. No, I don't know.
But that's a terrible end to a great fighting lady, isn't it?
She was a good ship. She
Yeah.
covered a lot of ocean.
A lot of adventures. Oh, yes, and you were out on the end
You're
there.
up there. See, this, it doesn't
Yeah.
look too high here, but when you're up there, you're looking down.
Especially when the
high.
ship is moving.
Yeah.
Well, Art, looking
Yeah.
back now, over 50 years,
Yeah.
it seems like it's a long time, what stands out in your mind the most about your military involvement?
Well, I was glad to go serve at the time. Everybody was being drafted in the Army, the Navy, the Marines, and I joined the Navy because I always liked the Navy. I figured the Navy was going to be, and I was 17 when I went in. So, and I signed in the regular Navy, so I had to stay till I was 21 years old. So I figured now, there's a lot of fellows that went into service, and some that came back, some didn't come back. And I don't know if the young people today realize or not their freedom, the liberty that they have. That all these fellows that put their life on the lines, and some of them just take it for granted today. I'm free, I can do what I want. But there's a lot of fellows who didn't get that choice. They stayed in the islands. Some never got back. Some they never found. Mm-hmm. And I feel, that today, that some of these people today should realize their freedom and be real grateful that they had all these fellows that went at the time of need and to give them their freedom. And I was glad I was fortunate that I served, and we were very fortunate.
And you came home
we
unscathed.
came home unscathed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you certainly have some great memories, and we thank you for sharing with us today, Art. That was awfully nice of you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Our first guest this Sunday afternoon is Fran Cunningham, longtime owner of the Main Street Diner, well known around town. And Franny's had some fantastic experiences, and he's going to talk to us about them.
Well, I think it was about back in 1940, the summer of 40, when the talk of the war and everything, and starting with the draft. Bob Thompson, who lived down at Shuttle Meadow Road in Plainville, working in Hartford, heard about the National Guard building up and they starting a service company. And so he got talking to us about it. We had to go away and get our year over with. And so we thought about it, and we figured, well, we might as well go and do it for a year. There was Al Nazzo, Lefty Barth, John Bosco, Nick Marginelli, Eddie Wright, that worked at Wright's Tavern there as a bartender. He ended up as a cook. And Tony Iacobellis. We all went into our service company up in Hartford. Of course, they talked to us about beautiful Camp Blanding, Florida. Weather beautiful. In the morning you wake up and you reach out and you pick an orange or a grapefruit right off the tree. It sounded pretty good. And so we went into training up in West Hartford. And later on we were federalized and we took off for Camp Blanding. I was on an advanced detail. We went down by train. The rest of them went down by trucks or command cars or...
Wow, that was a long ride.
Yes.
In a truck.
Yeah, and they, that's why we more or less volunteered, about the only thing I ever volunteered for to service. And so we got down into Stark, Florida. And from there they backed us in to Camp Blanding. I thought I was going into some French penal colony or something, the way the swamps and these trees growing up and everything. It kept going and going and going. Finally we got into Camp Blanding. And he says, well, this is everybody gets off here. I looked. I see nothing but frames, tent frames. I said, I wanted to go back home.
Didn't see those oranges.
No. They had rebuilt the whole thing. It was a swamp, and they rebuilt it. There was a general down there by the name of Blanding. He owned it, and so the Army fixed it up, and he still owned it. Well, anyway, we got off and went up and found our area, and I went in there, and there's a big pyramidal tent sitting right in the middle of the floor. I had this big, heavy overcoat on, colder than hell. I says, what the hell did I sign? But after that, the rest of the troops started coming in, and it, things got going good, took your mind off of everything. And being a service company, we had to take care of drawing rations and everything, and from the big warehouse, we brought them up to our area and then distributed them to the rest of the division.
Franny, tell us what unit you were in.
Oh, I was in the service company, 43rd Quartermaster of the 43rd Division. And so what happened, they brought in a bunch of fellas that worked for Barnum and Bailey to show us how to put these big tents up. Of course, Barnum and Bailey is down in Florida, down around Sarasota or something. And so that was one of the first things that, we had from the outside that came in. And we spent about a little over a year and a few months in Camp Blanding. When we were there was a 31st Division and the 43rd. And when we left, there was well over 100,000 troops in that little camp. It was pretty... we went from there, we went over to Camp Shelby, Mississippi. And all the time we were in the service down there, we were living in tents. And from Camp Shelby, Mississippi, we went out to Fort Ord, and we shipped out to New Zealand. I think that was in October. And the first big boat ride, And I always remember we got on boat on board the ship that night, or in the morning, and we started taking off in late afternoon, and we went under the Golden Bridge. As soon as you seemed like getting under there, everything got rocky. And we're all eating at the time, or everybody was standing up. Well, this fella leave here, that fella left there, this fella leave there. And they were sick leaving. And I think at the time, I always thought it was oxtail soup that we were having that night. And later on, when I got back from the service, I told Juddy Wadgers about it. Juddy was an old World War I Navy man. And I told him how everybody was sick, and I said, Jesus, I made it upstairs, I says, and I got there, and I thought I was letting everything go, and I said, Jesus, I thought that I threw up some oxtail soup. The oxtail, with the hair on. Juddy says, that wasn't oxtail, he says. That was something that belonged to you that was way down. Well, anyway, after a while, we went going to New Zealand. It took close to 30 days to get over there. And Lefty Barth, Johnny Barth and I, we used to sneak up on board, up on the deck at nighttime, because it was so crowded, and in order to get through, there were 4 high. You had to go sideways. And we were right in the bottom, you know, right up near the bow of the boat there.
Mm-hmm. It must have been stifling.
Oh, there was one little light up there, and they all hollered like, "Yeah, take it, turn it off, it's too hot."
Yeah.
Well, one night it was raining, so we didn't go up. And it got a little rough. And you know, these dinner trays we have, they stacked them, but they didn't secure them. Well, they took off and ran right on the floor. Somebody hollered torpedo.
Oh, dear.
Oh, gee. You never see everybody, you know, not know what way to go in the dark. But then they come over to the loudspeaker, what happened, so everything quieted down. We made it over into New Zealand pretty good. One night we got hit with a lot of coffee grounds. I smelled like a coffee pot for about a week. And we went into New Zealand. It was a beautiful sight, beautiful sight. The rolling hills, you know, green. And that was the starting of the spring. Their summer, coming into their summer, their seasons are just opposite ours. And I wasn't in New Zealand too long because out I go on advanced detail. We went up to New Caledonia. By the way, the 172nd Infantry from Vermont, they went in, and they, I don't know if they didn't have the right navigator there or the pilot, and the boat sank.
Oh, dear.
The whole 172nd. They didn't lose one, no personnel was lost.
This was going into
New Zealand.
New Zealand.
And, excuse me. They had all their equipment and everything was gone. But we were in there, and so we took off, and I went on advanced detail. We went up to New Caledonia. And we were there for a while, and I had to go up there to secure our area where we're going to be. And I met up with some nice New Zealand fellas. I said they were nice because they used to give us beer. And so then when the rest of the outfit came up, then we went into Guadalcanal. By that time, the fighting was pretty much down, and we relieved the Marical. That was an Army division. And this way here, I guess, our infantry went in, and they were able to gather experience without too much, you know, too many, not enough of the enemy around to... Mm-hmm. They got a good experience in that way.
It was like a breaking in period.
That's exactly. Mm-hmm. And from there, we were there for a while, and we went up to the Russell Islands. And it was, in the beginning, it was supposed to be a lot of troops there, Japanese there, but there wasn't. And that's where I found torpedo base up there, the torpedo boats. We were watching them a lot. And
now these were the Japanese torpedo boats?
No, our
torpedo boats.
torpedo boats. They're up there in the Russell Islands, and at the time we weren't getting enough rations up. The furthest troops ahead always seemed to be the last ones to be fed. That was about the way it was. So they sent me down to. I went down to Guadalcanal on one of the boats and see about the rations. And what happened, they had an air attack there, and the ration dump got bombed. And so they didn't really have another one to send up, so they gave us what they had, and then they threw a couple of trucks on board the barge there, or whatever it was that took us up there. And that night, the fellows were very nice. And that night, I see them coming out with flashlights and start going over, and they're taking all of the real good stuff, you know, the juices and the fruits and things that we would give to the hospital. And I stopped them. I said, "No, you can't do that." Well, we always do. I says, "No, we need this." Well, okay, they went in. Later on, it started raining a little bit. I go up there to try to get into the place. I said, "Well, I'll get in the truck." Trucks are locked. What a miserable night. I should have said, "Go ahead."
So what did you do, get under the truck? Or?
I couldn't, because the way the boat was going, I was afraid to slip the thing there. So that was my first experience in trying to be a good soldier.
Diplomacy.
Yeah. And, well, we left, and that was one of the reasons why the people were a real shortage. And then when they did send it up, instead of taking that old stuff and throwing it out to sea, they sent it up to us. And all day or all night you could hear these cans explode, you know, from the heat in the day, and then at nighttime it'd be cold and they'd explode. But that was one of the reasons why the 43rd had a little food problem there for a while. Then we went over to, from there we went up to New Georgia. And when we went up, we went up the island there, the 169th got off here. And the 172nd got off here. This is the Munda airfield. And they went in there where there's supposed to be a lot of Japs and wouldn't. But the poor 169th come up through the middle. And the Japs have been there for such a long time. Even a couple of weeks, the growth would, you couldn't see
Regrow, yeah.
And so they'd go along and their back was right, machine gun was right at them, or if it was just a little turn in the road up the
A lot
way,
of casualties.
There, a lot.
Yeah.
And they had an awful lot of malaria, you know. You get tired and everything, you get worked down.
Franny, you've got a picture here of your group in New Georgia, and maybe you can explain to us why all these young men are practically naked.
Well, those are the fellas that we had the trucking company, which we would deliver clothing and rations and everything. And you'll notice there, you don't see anybody with any insignias on. That was one.
They don't have much on.
No, and that was one of the things up there that we never called them captain or colonel and this and that. In there, there's a full colonel, a major, a captain, and a lieutenant, plus all the other.
And it's anybody's guess who's who.
That's it. And so when we took off for up there, when we stopped off and in Rendova. It was a little island off of the Georgia. And we went in, and the colonel and his driver and I, and he finagled around. He got himself a Jeep later on in the day, and so we started looking around for headquarters. Well, we found headquarters company, and he was going to see if they wanted to tell him anything or not, but he says, let's get the hell out of here. He says, there's too much brass here. There's too congested. He says, I don't like it. We went from there, it's like a horseshoe, right around, and we went over the opposite side. We had no sooner got there, over these planes started dropping bombs on us.
These are Japanese planes.
Japanese planes. And that's where they hit right in there, and that's where Eddie Lindsley, I believe he was killed right in the headquarters, where the headquarters are setting up.
And Eddie, of course, was a Plainville boy.
And he was a Plainville boy, and he went down with the 169th National Guard infantry there from the 43rd Division. And I also lost another very good friend that I met from Vermont, and I was with him all the way through until that happened. But went over into Georgia, and as I said before, the 169th took an awful beating there. I mean, they weren't supposed to have what they...
They weren't expecting it.
No, they weren't. And so we were there for quite a while, and with the malaria, the wounded, and the dead, and everything, we were up in the islands for about 16 to 18 months.
And what was the climate like while you were there? Was it pretty hot and steamy?
Hot.
Tropical.
Tropical, real tropical. And as soon as you get wore down on anything, you'd get the malaria. Malaria would pop right in. I mean, that'd knock you. That'd knock you.
Yeah.
And I never had quinine before, and my ears started ringing. And
From the quinine.
From the quinine, not knowing that, I think somebody had the malaria of the brain or something, and everybody thought that's what they were getting, the same thing. But no, it was...
But when you got malaria, you just keep going, right? I mean, you...
Well, you could. I mean, you'd...
there was a hospital area?
Yeah, they brought them back. I know Danny Acabellas and Willie Gigi. They were going up one of the trails, and they're even carrying ammunition, or they're carrying rations up, and they both dropped, and they brought them back, and they went back to the excuse me, back to the hospital area, and then they shipped them further back. I think they got down.
Were they wounded, or did they have malaria?
No, malaria.
Malaria, and just dropped them in their tracks.
Yeah, and I think they brought them back down to Guadalcanal. And I think that's where Willie Gigi, Severio.
Oh,
Willie
all right.
Severio.
I didn't get.
Yeah.
So these again are Plainville people.
Yeah, he went back to the States, and I think Danny Acabellas had to come back up. He lived right next door to us on the corner of Huff and Maple, the big house there. And so finally we went back down. We got down to Guadalcanal again. We're being relieved. I think if we had enough troops and everything, we'd have gone on to Bougainville, but we didn't have enough to get in there. And we got back down to Guadalcanal, to this one area, where people are coming and going. And I heard, you find out this and that and talk about different ones. And this Lenny Broadwell, I met him there. He lived in the house across from the junior high, now the junior, it used to be the junior high. It was a senior high school, the high school building. He lived in the house across the street from there. And he was on his way up. And I heard later that he did get killed up there. He probably got it in Bougainville. I'm not sure.
And then there was another Plainville boy you mentioned to me about losing in an ammunition dump.
That was in the Philippines.
Oh, all right.
We went back down to Auckland again. We were in and we went into. Matter of fact, when we first went over, we went into Auckland. That's the North Island. We were the first American troops up there. The Marines were down in the South Island, down in Christchurch. So when we went back, we still went back into Auckland. And everybody was just down. They had to build up and everything. They took every boat out of the Pacific for the
Normandy invasion.
For the invasion. And so while we were there, we bought a car. Matter of fact, we bought 2 cars. So we really had a good time. Then we got, after there, I think was there for about 2 months. People were really good there. To us, they were. And so then we went back up, and we were going along. No one knew where we were going. You try to find out this and that. And so finally, we went into New Guinea, Aitapi. And there wasn't nothing of a landing there, but what it was, the Japs were coming towards us. And they're up in the mountains. And they were coming towards us, being told that if they could get to the beaches, there were boats there that would take them back home. And so the infantry just lined up on this big river. And this is where the 169th got even. When the Japs are coming, trying to get across that river, they just... That was a red river. That was a red river. And we were there for a while, and then we took off and went up to the Philippines. And there wasn't too much bombing or anything from there. When we made the landing, I know we seen a big battle at Guadalcanal. I was with the lieutenant. He and I ate good there too. He let me take his bars, and we were eating with the Air Force. And that's when we seen this great big air battle that one day. I'm telling you.
This is over Guadalcanal.
Yeah, over Guadalcanal. I think that was a turning point there. They did. But then getting back up, going into the Philippines, we went into the same area, same landing as where the Japs went in. When they invaded the Philippines, we went into the same area there. We're working the beaches. And that was the day I see MacArthur. He come marching in there, I have returned and everything.
Yeah.
And
did he look like the cartoon showed him? The big hat and the sunglasses and all?
Oh, yeah, the glasses and everything. He'd come walking right in. They let him off. Of course, everything had to be fixed up. They had the cameras and all this and that.
Photo opportunity.
Oh, God, that was great. They were always big with the their cameras and everything. We went in and our troops went straight across, trying to separate
Not
the
much
jets.
resistance.
Not too much. There was enough. And we were in there for, I don't know just how long we were in we moved around quite a bit. We just kept following our regiment along. A lot of times, you get set in one spot, but this time here we just followed them all around, and we went down into I can't even remember last Monday what happened here. I'm trying to think about
50 years ago.
About 50 years ago. Well,
I'm sorry, skip that one.
yeah. Well, that was about the end of it. Then we're up in the islands there, and we're getting ready. The next thing we're getting ready for, I remember making out different. Well, we had to figure out for rations and everything for the invasion into Japan. Our 43rd was one of the ones that were going in there. We're going in with one of their other two divisions and making one landing here. They were landing all over the place, but I had to get requisitions ready for all, the food and all this. That was my main job, and that was one of my last jobs I did there. From there we went home and started going home. We got enough numbers and everything to get out of there. And I remember when down in, we landed in San Francisco. We just got off the boat. We were lining up, ready to go. I think we were going to go to Angels Island. I'm not sure. That was where we're going to get discharged from. And all the whistles and everything started blowing.
The war was over.
The war was over.
Yeah. What timing? What timing?
Yeah, right there. And, there wasn't any hoopla or anything like that. Everybody just looked at each other and shook hands and, smiled and everything.
Thank
There's
heavens.
probably a tear or so, thinking back of the different ones that
Didn't come back.
didn't come back, yeah.
Franny, now looking back over 50 years, you've had a lot of water over the dam, shall we say, in 50 years. But looking back at your military experience, what do you remember the most? What do you think about?
Well, we were up the island a little bit. And we're coming down in the Philippines. We're coming down there where there's this airfield there, and I told you, any time there's a shed or anything, our colonel loved that, so he could bring all the equipment in. And so I was on the advanced detail, and I had 3 or 4 fellows with me, and we also had a water tank with us. We had 2 in the companies, and I took the one that was empty because I'd get down there and I'd try to get water for the fellows when they come in. And so I started going down. And I come to this place that says McGill Brewery. And so I stopped in and I said, well, geez, we got water here. So I went in. Says, hey, how about water? Sure. The guy says, what do you want water? I said, what do you think you want water for? He says, no. He says, when you can have all the beer you want, why take water? I thought, geez, that's a dusty ride. So I went in and we filled up pretty much the whole tank
With beer?
So I got back and everybody wanted to know, they're getting ready to, by that time the troops are coming in. The trucks and everything are coming in, so they wanted, the water and all this and that. So I didn't say nothing. They started drawing, in their helmets, Gee, they got out those tin cans and they started drinking that beer. I thought I was going to be made colonel right on the spot. But the next morning, I almost was down to a private. It was green beer, and everybody in the company got the GI, the runs.
Well, that didn't work out the way you planned it, was
No,
it?
but put the whole commission, the whole company out of commission for a while. But,
Maybe the Japanese planned that.
yeah, but that was about the.
So you had some good experiences along with the bad experiences. Yeah.
Yeah, there was you met an awful lot of nice people, and you made some good friends, and
Did you end up with any of the Plainville guys that you started out with?
Yes. Tony Acabellis, excuse me, and Al Nassau.
You kind of stayed together through the whole thing?
We stayed together through the whole
Yeah.
thing.
Now, you're the first one that's told me that. Most everybody got separated.
Yeah. Well, what happened in the beginning, we went, the 43rd Division, all the divisions in the beginning were what they call square divisions. That was 4 infantry regiments, 4 field artillery. And so then they put it to a triangle, and they took the field artillery and an infantry regiment out. And then as you got in there and you got more experiences, they kept building up different divisions. So then they'd grab different ones, you know,
And that's how they got separated.
the cadre to make up new, because like Nick Marginelli left us, Bob Thompson went to India, I think Nick went up north, Johnny Bosco went, all, Eddie Wright, everybody left, not left, but I mean, just a few, but you made new friends, and we still had, Lefty Barth, he left us back in Russell Evans. No, New Georgia. That's when he left the company. He had asthma or something.
Well, it sounds like you had some real good experiences, and thank you for sharing them with us today very much, Franny. We appreciate
Yeah,
that.
it was my pleasure. I mean,
Thank
just
you.
to start thinking back on the different things that,
Yeah.
of course, there's a lot much more things, but
Thank you very much,
it
Franny.
was my pleasure.
Our next guest is Rocco Maglio of the U.S. Marines, and Rocky has some different stories to tell this afternoon of his experiences as a mortar man.
I was 18 when I enlisted. I was on a ship for about, I'd say 2 months, going across. We stopped here and there in the Marshall Islands. Then I landed on Guam. Now we said, well, we made the invasion of Guam, we cleared the whole island. Because we had a lot of snipers there when I got there, when I landed. And we made a clean sweep of the island. Then from there we did our training. I loved Guam. It was nice. Real
What was
nice.
the climate like there, Rocky?
Beautiful. Just like paradise. One of these resorts.
The typical island that you think about.
Yes,
Yeah.
very nice. Weather was fantastic. Yep. We lived in the tents, pup tents. And we trained there for our next invasion was Iwo Jima.
The Big E.
Yep. I was in February of 45. No, 44, I'm sorry. February of 44 we landed. We were supposed to be the floating reserves. We were, if they didn't need us, we were going to go back to the ship.
Yeah.
Anyway, the first day, second day, I think it was the third day, we got over the ship, into the boats. We're going to hit the beach. We're on the water 4 hours. 4 hours,
Trying to get in?
Well, just in case they needed us,
I
they
see.
tell us, come in.
Yeah.
So then they tell us, we don't need you. Go back to the ship. You got to climb up the rope, oh my God. Anyway, next day, over the side again, 2 hours in the water, the boats. And then we had to hit
Did
the
the guys
beach.
get seasick?
There was a few,
Yeah.
But I didn't. And then the time I was on that ship for, almost 2 months, I never got seasick once. Never.
That's
And the
good.
first time I was on a boat, too,
Yeah.
for that matter. But anyway, we landed on Iwo. You should see it. It was a mess. Oh, my God. Everywhere you looked was dead Marines,
And equipment, broken things.
Yeah. So our commander there in charge, he said, okay, I want some volunteers. You. Go pick up the bodies and move them over. They really got a shellac. Oh. And I bet you I was on there for about 25 days. I never took off my shoes. You should have seen when I did. My feet were, my toes, they were raw.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
And probably your socks were disintegrated.
Yeah. Bad, real bad. We used to have, our, sea rations. That's all you can do. Always moving. And then there was one time a platoon, right next to me, got hit with a motor, a Japanese motor. Big guys, big, heavy guys there, talking out of their head, when they're being, it was bad. War is hell, believe me.
Rocky, tell me about this mortar that you were
I was an
involved with.
81 millimeter mortar. We used to drop these tubes like in there.
Yes.
We used to shoot those. That's what I was. I was number 1 mortar.
Now, you had to carry this thing
Oh,
around?
yeah, we carried you know, the motor itself.
Yes,
And the guys had to carry the ammunition. Oh, yes.
so that was heavy, like through those trails.
Well, it wasn't that bad. You know, we'd move up maybe a couple 100 yards every so often. But that wasn't bad. I used
So you
to
would
carry
advance.
a 45.
You would advance like right with the infantry.
Oh, yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I carried a 40. Well, I had a carbine, you know, but they got clumsy, so they give us a 45. I used to have a lot of fun with that. They used to have those those water buffaloes, you know. Get on one of those and hi-oh, Silver. And then from there, after we got back from Iwo, we went to Tientsin, China. I was there 6 months. Don't ask me what I was doing there. Eating like a king.
Were you training there or something?
Nothing, no. Nothing. They call us out for drill in the morning, you know, roll call. After that, you're on your own. Every morning, as long as you were there. And every day you go out. Yeah, that Tientsin, China was an experience. Bad. People are real bad there, you know. Oh. I don't mean bad, it's just the way they live.
You mean their conditions, the civilian conditions?
Oh. Really sickening. Stink, you know. Oh. But I don't know what I was doing there, really. There's nothing to do. And then I was leaving, and who do you think was taking my place? My brother.
Oh,
My
for
kid
heaven's
brother. I mean, yeah. I was on my way home, and he was on his way to Tientsin, China.
So that was when you went to China. That was the end of your
Yeah,
tour.
that was the end of my tour. Yep.
Let's back up to that invasion of Iwo Jima. When you went in, were you like in the? You said that you were a supplemental group,
Right.
and they called you in on the fourth day.
Third, I think it was the
Third or
day.
fourth,
Yeah.
okay.
All right.
So there had already been tremendous casualties.
Oh, yes, they took a real beating.
Now the terrain there on Iwo Jima, was it a flat beach
Yes.
or were there cliffs or?
No cliffs. There was flat. Well, you know, a few hills, but it was.
But the Japanese must have been entrenched somewhere.
They were there 20 years waiting for us.
Yeah.
They were in caves.
Uh-huh.
Caves. I mean tunnels.
So they
you know,
had-
just like subways today.
They had fortifications
Oh,
underground.
sure, they were waiting.
And so when the Marines came in, they just picked them off.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
And Army, Air Force bombed that place for I don't know how many days.
But
Didn't
being
even put a-
underground,
couldn't even dent it.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. So you were put on body patrol as well as your
everything,
mortar.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
they had to get those people taken care of.
Yes.
So how long did it actually take then for the Marines to work their way inland?
Oh.
A week or?
No, it took more than that.
Yeah.
I'd say maybe 20, 21 days.
It's considered
But-
one of the bloodiest conflicts of
yes.
the war.
It was bad. It took 60,000 of us for 20,000 Marines.
Now, were you
I mean, Japs. Japs.
were you with any other Plainville boys at that period of time?
No.
You had because some of the people I talked to stay with other Plainville
Yeah,
kids, and,
yeah.
and others
No,
just are completely
there was
separated.
nobody there with, you know, that I knew from Connecticut. But I went, you know, when I went in, there was a lot of guys I knew from around here. But, you know, they all scatter.
Yeah, they separate you.
Yeah, right.
Depending on your. Now, did you choose to be a mortar man, or was that assigned to you?
Well, I was in headquarters company, the 21st Marines, and that's what it was, a motor.
That was a mortar.
Yes, yes.
When you look back, Rocky, over the years, over 50 years, can you
Just
believe
about,
it's 50
yeah.
years?
Oh, boy.
What stands out in your mind the most about your war experiences?
Well, I think, you know, every young fella should go into service. You know, do their whatever, 2, 3 years, whatever it takes.
Many countries have this as a compulsory
Right,
thing.
right, you know. I don't see nothing wrong with it. I'm not sorry I went in, right? But not really. I don't see nothing bad, you know, that I can say, except for that Iwo deal, you know.
Yeah, that was
and
the
I
worst.
never thought about getting killed. You know, really, it never entered my mind. I kept saying in the back of my head, you know, when am I going to go home? When am I going to go home?
Maybe that was good psychology.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I
And
think
you
it
were
was.
never wounded or injured
No,
anyway,
no,
except your
no.
feet.
My feet. Well, I got a can. I opened a C ration can. I got a cut. One of the corpsmen wanted to give me a Purple Heart. You know, I felt guilty. I said, "No, forget it."
Out
you
of
know?
the can of C rations.
Right.
So
Oh,
you feel you came through rather well,
Yes, I
despite
did.
your experiences.
Yep.
You were very fortunate.
Right. And I didn't take no, you know, disabilities, nothing outside of my feet. You know, but I didn't want to bother.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Rocky, for sharing with us today. It's very
Pleasure,
interesting.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.